Hello and welcome. My name is Chinmaya Thakur. I'm a partner with Deloitte Private based in Toronto. I act as a business advisor to mid-market companies. I'm a seasoned coach with Canada's Best Managed Companies program, and I lead Deloitte Canada's Strategy Realization Office. I'm also one of the partner champions for the relationship with Mississauga Board of Trade and Deloitte, and I'm so pleased to be here today and introduce our speakers for our timely and insightful session today. Future of Finance, Reimagining Finance, and Looking Beyond the Pandemic. We have been so thrilled to bring this webinar series to life in partnership with MBOT and looking forward to future sessions as part of the series. I'm now happy to introduce our speakers for this session, Varada Saraf and Alex Lupu. Varada is a senior manager in our accounting operations assurance practice in Toronto, where she specializes in finance transformation projects, including finance operating model reviews, finance visioning, and strategy development support. Varada focuses on finance effectiveness and efficiency projects, including process improvement assessments, close optimizations, internal control assessments, finance visioning, and strategy development. Alex is a senior manager in accounting, operations, and assurance practice, and he specializes in leading clients through finance vision and strategy development and execution, finance organization, finance operating model reviews, finance close optimization, process and technology improvement, and internal control maturity assessments. Over to you, Varada and Alex. Very nice to have you both here.
Thanks, Chinmaya, and thank you, MBOT, for having Alex and myself to present on this topic. As Chinmaya said, it's a great topic for us to discuss given the reality that we've been living in for the last couple of years. Stephanie, I'm just going to ask you to flip a couple of slides down to the future of finance. Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. And thanks everyone for joining today. So as we've briefly discussed, we're really here to talk about the future of finance and what the finance trends look like in the upcoming years. The pandemic has naturally been very disruptive to all of us, and finance functions have been no exception. A lot of finance functions have actually taken this opportunity and used this as a catalyst to enhance their finance functions, determine what their future holds, while looking to increase efficiencies and really driving value within finance functions. And to see what this future might look like, we actually have a quick video that kind of shows us the two different paths that finance may take as they look to drive value in the coming days. Stephanie, can we please flip to the next slide and the video?
Digital transformation opens the door for many opportunities within finance. Today, finance is asked to essentially set the course for the years to come. Let's take a closer look at two possible scenarios for the future. We're in the year 2022. Finance as a division has significantly shrunk. In many areas, standardization and automation have taken place. Many processes have been automized efficiently through robotics. Finance consists of a small team of specialists for topics like IFRS, taxes, risk management, compliance, regulation, and financing mechanisms. Processing of financial statements is now fully automated. The operational responsibility for the closing process is now owned by IT. Business decisions are primarily taken based on information derived from operational functions. Marketing and sales, as well as technology, invested early in big data and analytics and are now jointly leading the Center for Analytics. Finance has lost its leading role and is no longer involved in important decision-making. Instead, it focuses on contributing special expertise where needed. The responsibility of planning and forecasting has shifted completely towards operations. Early on, they set up big data-based prediction models within their divisions. The role of finance is limited to planning of financial mechanisms, taxes, as well as currency and consolidation effects. Finance has become a mere center of excellence that is limited to providing highly specialized financial expertise upon request. 2017. finance missed the opportunity to claim and shape new digital trends and actively build a future vision for themselves. Finance was overrun by digitalization and lost its role of being part of the strategic development of the entire organization. 2017, finance decided to become a leading pioneer of digitalization. Finance analyzed digital trends for themselves and developed a target and vision for the future. The goal was to act, not react, and develop a common vision. Upon this foundation, new opportunities were identified, and as a result, a newly formed roadmap has been developed to define specific actions for the years to come. An interdisciplinary team coordinates analytical topics and combines deep business competence with technical know-how. Finance was the driver for building the Center for Analytics. Information from various sources are combined in real time. The planning and forecasting process has been automated to the highest degree possible with modern statistical methods and big data. The forecast preparation is done by a push of a button, and finance is able to focus on the development of new insights. From day one, all finance executives have been involved in the development of the target vision. Finance now combines strategic competence with in-depth business know-how. New skills in the area of data modeling and analytics have been built up and used successfully. Finance focuses on cross-functional and interdisciplinary cooperation. 2022. Standard processes have been fully automated. Finance has gained time and capacity to consider and work with analytical-related questions. Finance is the co-pilot in the context of strategic development and appreciated as a business partner for operational functions. Now, it's time to define your future in the digital world.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. As Chinmaya mentioned, my name is Alex, and I will be speaking to the next couple of slides. I hope you enjoy the video. And so to start things off, we wanted to summarize what the video discussed, and specifically the two scenarios that we see can apply to the finance functions of any organization. And so we see two scenarios, and I'll start by talking about the cost efficiency scenario that you see here at the bottom. And this one is a scenario that can happen a little bit more easily and naturally, and so requires very little effort from the organization, and what it entails, it's essentially the finance function focusing very much on the cost efficiencies that are that can be realized by technology, and very much on the automation of the tactical execution of all of the finance activities. And so it doesn't really focus as much on integrating finance and its outputs with the rest of the organization. It's rather the automation of the finance processes. At the top side of the screen, we have the value creation scenario, which was the second scenario described in the video. In this scenario, automation is really leveraged more to enhance the relationships between finance and the rest of the organization, to free up some of the time that finance professionals spend on the creation of and the development of data, and use that time in ways that add value to the broader organization, where finance works with the other departments, serves as a liaison, is more involved in decision making, and overall drives more value by serving as a partner to the overall business. And as the scale suggests, obviously there's more value generated by the value creation scenario, and the cost of doing so is also is also higher, because it requires a little bit more involvement and overall work and effort put in by the finance department. So if we move to the next slide, we wanted to highlight some of the predictions that we see, and so this is to provide some context for the overall trajectory of finance. So what I want to emphasize here is that we see all of these predictions happening irrespective of the path that finance chooses. So these are, you can look at these as things that will be happening in the background, whether we like it or not. This is more of a reality that we think will happen by 2025. And so a few things here. The finance factory. So basically what we expect to see is that transactions will be touchless, and there's going to be significantly less manual intervention required, where technology will be doing all of the hard work, and the number of manual processes will be reduced. The second one is the role of finance. So basically, as more time will be freed up, finance will have more time to spend on business insights and service. And so there's going to be a shift away from the tactical production of finance data. There will be a less emphasis on finance cycles. So we're still very much used to periodic closes, and whether it's monthly, quarterly, or yearly, it's something that us all finance professionals have been conditioned to think that way in cycles. And so we will be seeing less of that as time progresses, because data will be more readily available in real time, and technology will allow us to get a snapshot of that company's performance without you know, the effort that's required to close and prep the books to get to that period end close. Self-service will become the norm. What this means is that, again, data will be more readily accessible in the organization, and so think of any other department in the organization that requires access to data. They will be able to more easily access that information themselves without having to reach out to someone in finance and having to wait until those people have the chance to prepare whatever report is needed. We think more of this information will be readily available and accessible very, very easily. In terms of operating models, we anticipate an increase in alternative delivery models. We think there's going to be an increase in offshore operating models, where some components of the finance operations will be outsourced, where the use of technology will enable a more seamless integration and will make it less critical for those processes to reside in-house onshore. Number 6, ERPs. So we're already starting to see an increase in the volume of applications and microservices that challenge traditional ERPs. There's all kinds of applications that coexist with the ERP, and they enhance the output. Services that come to mind that you may or may not have heard of, Workiva or Blackline or Concur. So these softwares, they typically coexist with ERPs. However, as time progresses, they will start expanding their reach and scope. And so that will be a challenge to your typical ERPs, where their functionalities or some of their functionality may not necessarily be as critical as it currently is. Number 7, data. So we're seeing more customization overall in application programming interfaces. So ERPs and all the tools that we see these days, they typically have a lot of customization that allows users to define certain reports and dashboards that they would like to see, and so that will help with the overall cleanup of the data, but it's not going to be enough on its own to clean the data messes that some of the organizations currently face. But it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it will help tremendously. And the last but not least, and this is actually a very important one, and we'll talk more about this in the coming slides, workforce and workplace. So given the flexibility that technology will enable in finance, there will be new ways of doing business, new ways of executing the same process or reaching the same output, and so there will be a little bit of discomfort there that we're going to start to see, considering that things can be done more efficiently, and employees who are more technology friendly or inclined to rely more on technology, they may discover these ways and start a trend throughout the organization to do things more efficiently and differently. I think we can move to the next slide.
Thanks, Alex.
Right, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks. So obviously, COVID-19 has been a reality for all of us over the last several years now. And again, talking about disruption, it has been extremely disruptive to organizations in finance as well. If we just flip to the next slide, we can look at how COVID-19 has impacted us and finance functions specifically. One of the big ways that COVID has impacted finance functions, it's really changed the way that we work. The future of work has come to our doorstep a lot quicker and has become our reality a lot faster than any one of us could have anticipated. 4 out of 5 workers globally have been affected by COVID-19. It has changed the way we work. It has moved 3/4 of us to remote work, at least in some capacity. Of the people that we surveyed for this interview, I think half of them believe that at least some or part of their work will continue to be remote in the coming future. Every one of us has been working with a hybrid environment, learning how to collaborate differently, and it's really forced finance functions and all departments within an organization to embrace technology a lot faster than we could have imagined. This is obviously a double-edged sword, being, as we discussed, technology can really take us down the way of cost efficiency, and we can just leverage these tools to become more efficient, or we can leverage these tools to become efficient and also drive value. This is going to be the new frame of challenge that finance functions is going to have to embrace, and you find new creative ways to leverage technology and drive value rather than focus on the cost reduction and the cost efficiency that these technologies will offer. If we go to the next slide, this chart really helps us understand how COVID-19 is going to change our capacity. So really, it's about expanding our work from home capabilities. We've all had to work remotely in some capacity. Every one of us has to accelerate our digital capabilities. really think organizations have had to think about what their business continuity plans look like. That's not something that organizations really focused on prior to COVID-19, but this has become the forefront of a lot of organizations' continuity planning. How are we going to ensure that our business operations can operate in an environment where we're not on campus every single day, when we're not working with just people that we could turn around in our chair and ask a question to? How do we leverage technology to become more efficient and manage our businesses without the disruption? As you can see, the focus on cost reduction has been a lot lower, rather than thinking about continuity plans, expanding shared services. That's where we've seen a lot of the focus on as a result of the pandemic. And then if we flip to the next slide, what really has come out of the pandemic is 3 key questions for finance. And we've outlined those on the next slide. So coming out of the pandemic, we finance functions and finance professionals really have to ask ourselves 3 key questions as we look to forge our path forward. What is the role of finance, and how is our work going to be managed? What does the workforce look like? How will it be configured in order for finance to be successful in the future? And how is this going to impact the workplace? What does the workplace look like, and how are we going to harness technology to enable that new workplace for us to all be successful? As we mentioned, and as the video suggested, technology is going to be the forefront at to answer all of these questions. But it's up to finance professionals to leverage and harness this technology in the right way to drive value rather than cost effectiveness. And then we'll go into a little bit more detail to help answer some of these 3 key questions that we believe should be top of mind for all finance functions. Stephanie, I think we got to flip to the next slide, please.
Thanks, Radha. So what we wanted to do here is provide some context for those answers to the 3 questions that Bharata mentioned. I think it's important to consider how the workforce and the workplace are overall expected to evolve in a post-pandemic world. So what we've done here is based on our experience and interaction and discussion with clients, we wanted to highlight what we think we'll see more and what we think we'll see less of across the 3 items: the workforce, and workplace. So if we focus on the first row in terms of work, and I think we already touched on this numerous times, but obviously there's going to be more automation. We mentioned touchless transactions, and so an overall simplification of the process where the points where manual manipulation is required, that will be reduced. Complexity will also decrease. There's going to be more emphasis on predictive modeling and using the data in ways that it hasn't potentially been used before. And that's all to be able to provide more strategic advice and shift focus away from the tactical production of data. We expect to see a blurring of functional borders, and what that means is that we're going to see less of a box around finance, and there's going to be more integration of finance professionals with the rest of the organization, more communication, and a higher need for data interpretation and a liaison between finance and the strategic decision makers of the organization. And we talked about real-time finance cycles, so less emphasis on the periodic close, and as data will be more readily available in the organization. Now, on the flip side of things, what we expect to see less of, and a lot of these things will go hand in hand with the things that I just mentioned. So we're going to see, we expect to see smaller teams. So the volume of the size of the finance team is probably expected to shrink a little when it comes to core finance, and we're not saying that as that doesn't mean that it's a negative thing. We expect that a lot of finance professionals will be able to focus on other things in the organization rather than the pure production of data. Obviously, manual effort will be declining, and less reliance on spreadsheets, probably less use of Excel, and the emphasis will shift away from retrospective reporting and historical data, and it's going to be more about how do we take that data and how do we interpret it and model it to come up with what the future may look like.
Alex. And if we're thinking about the workforce, what does the workforce look like? Who is it going to be performing the work? What are the skill sets that finance will need in the future? How will organizations train their finance functions to be able to do that new work that Alex just mentioned? So I think we're going to see a lot more emphasis on data and design professionals, people who can mine, harvest data and make sense of it and present it in a way that makes sense. We expect to see a lot more cohesion within finance and other business units, specifically IT, as we look at managing large volumes of data and using that to do predictive analysis and modeling that helps finance add value across organizations, doing future assessments and understanding where new opportunities might lie. We believe that finance functions will really readily recruit candidates that are able to constantly learn, adapt quickly, and are extremely agile. We're thinking that finance functions will be focused on continuous improvement, and on the flip side, we're expecting a lot less permanent homogeneous positions. More emphasis on continuous learning and fewer and fewer transactional processing. As much as accountants and finance functions love to rely on Excel, I think we're going to start seeing less of that in day-to-day accounting as the workforce learns to adapt to technology that's more automated and learns how to develop that technology rather than use it to do transactional processing. So it's all about agility, adapting to analytics and constant learning rather than disjointedness, homogeneity, and permanent consistent finance roles.
And in terms of the workplace, and more specifically where the work is being conducted from, we expect to see more offshore models, obviously more remote work, whether that means remote but still locally where we work from home, or remote as in done from elsewhere in the world. Definitely more of that, as digital tools will enable collaboration to take place through our laptops and computers, and it will make it less necessary for people to get together and meet in person. And the next one is actually a very interesting one: nimble and dynamic culture. So it goes hand in hand with the offshore operating model, where people will have to exhibit a little bit more flexibility and we love the word agile, and I think it speaks volumes when it comes to the workforce these days. I think we all had to exhibit that, whether we liked it or not. At the beginning of 2020, it's something that we all were forced to be agile and shift to working remotely. So now that we've proven that that model actually works, and we were able to be productive and still produce the output that we have to, that's going to become more of the norm, and it's going to go hand in hand with the advancement of technology. Flat and agile organizational structure. And we've already started to see a flattening of the organizational structure, where you have less of a vertical integration of the layers in finance. So we're going to see less of that and more dotted lines of reporting. There's going to be more collaboration and less of the traditional roles where you have an analyst reporting into a senior financial analyst, reporting into a manager, senior manager, and so on. So there's going to be less of those layers, and so overall, that's that will be a change that will have to that will transform overall the finance function. And so what we'll see less of course, less of a static location, probably less of a need for an office. We're already having clients that are questioning the need for an office, and or definitely the size of the office that they had pre-pandemic, and whether they can shrink their footprint in that sense. So static and homogeneous culture, obviously less of that. That's the opposite of a nimble and dynamic culture. And so we're seeing that technology is pushing people to change and adapt to the new ways of doing business. And less of a hierarchical and siloed firm structure, more dotted lines overall, and so we expect to see less of a cultural stagnation, in that organizations will have to embrace a culture of change and continuous development. And so if we move to the next slide, and I know there's quite a bit of content that we that we covered, and so I think it's important, as you start thinking of those three questions and how your finance functions will evolve, and which of the two paths that we described at the beginning, which of those you would want to forge for yourselves, and how you want to navigate that. We wanted to leave you with a few points around how to more tactically, realize and model the change that you see in your organization. So we think that it's important to overall open it up for discussion within your teams, and try to collect their ideas and brainstorm. So having those brainstorming sessions to get their views on where things can be done differently, or where things aren't working as well, and what can be done to close those gaps and address those bottlenecks overall. Don't limit the exploration to finance. So we encourage that these conversations happen organization-wide and not just focus on the finance function, because there are ties, close ties that finance has with the rest of the organization. and then from there, building a list, tracking those opportunities, exploring them further, narrowing it down, and identifying, which ones are worth pursuing now versus later, identifying those where time to value is very short, and they can be realized very quickly, and the impact they have on the organization is pretty high. We would advise that you prioritize those and start moving the needle slowly, because no big change happens overnight. It has to start somewhere, and then from there, scaling what works, and continuing to pursue new projects and new opportunities that help advance the finance function and the organization overall, down the technology adoption path, and overall digitization. So maybe I'll open it up to questions. I would expect that there's quite a few things that come to mind, and maybe you have any questions for us that you would like us to clarify further based on what we've seen. So happy to chat.
Great, thank you to you both. We do have a few questions in our chat. Again, I ask that if anybody does want to ask a question, you can type it into the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, more than welcome to. So I'll start with the questions that we have here. So the video described working in cross-functional teams similar to what a project management office also describes. How does the finance department work together with a PMO, not referring to only an IT PMO?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. Feel free to jump in. And so a lot of the times what we see is, especially on projects that are related to finance optimization, or whether it's ERP or any type of leveraging technology that's supporting finance. Finance has to be at the forefront of the discussion, has to have a seat at the table, because at the end of the day, a lot of these technologies will impact finance. So, working cohesively with a project manager as well as an IT team really helps set the stage. So, it's all about, in my opinion, planning, making sure that finance requirements are derived ahead of time, voicing concerns that finance may face going through an implementation or a technology process, and making sure that finance needs are being met, and making sure that those requirements are being communicated to the project team ahead of time, and managing that change. So bringing finance teams along for the journey, making sure that your finance team is aware of why we're going through this transformation, understanding the team's requirements and roles and responsibilities, and providing them enough context so that they know why the change is happening, and providing them with a forum to voice their opinions and concerns as they go through this journey. Alex, any other thoughts from your side?
So no, I was saying that I think that's accurate, and I agree with everything you said. Maybe the only other point to add is that if the question is more around the regular execution of finance tasks and activities, and not so much the change itself, but potentially post-change, once that stability has been reached, I think yes, it is still very important to function similar to a PMO, because so first of all, that state of stability will not be reached right away, and so it's important that change is being monitored and communicated throughout the organization for a period following the implementation, let's call it, and so it's very important that there are champions that are identified, and people that are experts in a certain area that they have regular touch points, and so open communication is practiced throughout the organization with other departments to stay on top of everything and remediate any deficiencies that are identified.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, with companies investing in finance operational technology, are you seeing savings, and are your clients reinvesting the savings from their operations to new technology or new skill sets with their staff?
So there's definitely savings. Now, are there going to be savings in year one? Probably not, depending on the nature of investment. So it's really it really depends on what we're talking, because if we're talking about an ERP implementation, those are pretty expensive depending on the size of the organization. It can be a few $100,000, it can be millions of dollars, and so you're probably not going to see immediate savings right away. However, what you are going to see right away is qualitative improvements in the outputs. Probably there's going to be overall improved morale in the organization, and by year, depending on how things go, by year 2 or 3, you're going to start seeing savings. So if you look at it purely from a finance project perspective, if you do a present value on the cash flows, you are going to see savings, and it will be positive, but it will be realized over time rather than immediately. And then to the second part of that question, are organizations reinvesting that in their finance functions? Yes, we do see that. Part of that reinvestment is necessary, where training is required. You need to train your employees on the new processes and technology, but also reinvesting in their overall skills, not just purely from a process perspective, because the use of that technology now requires different skills, different capabilities, and just overall a different profile of an employee potentially in certain areas.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Varada and Alex, for the session today, and thank you to all the attendees for being here. We hope that you found the session informative and insightful. If you have any questions related to session today or any further information, please feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Have a great day, everybody.